Well, thank you for joining me again on Written for Our Learning. This has been some time since we have been studying with illness and the end of the year, the holidays. Several things just seem to keep interfering with our study. And so we want to resume looking at these lessons that are founded upon Romans chapter 15, verse 4, where Paul wrote that the things that were written aforetime were written for our learning. We look at these Old Testament lessons and the New Testament application, or better understanding the New Testament when we see how things worked under the Old. I'll ask, if you will, to be turning to Leviticus chapter 16, and in just a couple of moments, we're going to read verses 15 and 16 as we look at the blood that was on the mercy seat. The latter half of the book of Exodus is all about God's people receiving the law, building the tabernacle, and preparing themselves for how they were going to deal with their sin once they left Mount Sinai. We see the tabernacle was that which involved the lives of the people until the time of Solomon, when Solomon built the permanent temple that would be destroyed and rebuilt. But you're looking at the two different concepts, but the things were very similar as it relates to them. Inside the tabernacle, inside the most holy place, was the Ark of the Covenant. And on top of the Ark of the Covenant was a lid to it that was seen to be two creatures, cherubim, that were on the top facing each other, their wings touching. And that mercy seat was in reality, in the minds of the people, represented where God dwelled. But it was also a very important aspect. It was crucial to God's plan to redeem the sin of his people under the Mosaic system. Let's look now at Leviticus chapter 16, verses 15 and 16. Then he shall kill the goat of the sin offering, which is for the people, bring its blood inside the veil, do with that blood as he did with the blood of the bull, and sprinkle it on the mercy seat and before the mercy seat. So he shall make atonement for the holy place because of the uncleanness of the children of Israel, and because of their transgressions for all their sins. And so he shall do for the tabernacle of meeting, which remains among them in the midst of their uncleanness. The high priest could only go into the most holy place once per year, and had to offer sacrifices on behalf of himself first, before he could offer sacrifices for the sin of the people. But it was the blood of the bull on some occasions, the blood of the goat, and then you had the scapegoat, where on that day of atonement, the sins would be symbolically laid on the scapegoat. The goat turned out into the wilderness. We'll see that the reason for that was because it was not possible for the blood of bulls and goats to take away sins. We see that when we move into the book of Hebrews and see the essence of the better system. But they're looking at the mercy seat. He was to kill a goat and bring a blood offering behind the veil. He was to sprinkle it on the mercy seat and before the mercy seat, and he was to make atonement for the sins of the people of Israel. That was very key, very fundamental, very foundational as it relates to the Old Testament Mosaic system. But as we move into the New, we see that was typical of the blood that Christ shed, that sins may be forgiven. Let's look at several lessons. First of all, in 1 Peter chapter 1, verses 18 and 19, we won't read that one. I do want to read the last passage of our consideration. But 1 Peter chapter 1, verses 18 and 19, in essence says that we're not redeemed with corruptible things, but with the precious blood of Christ. Hebrews chapter 9, verse 12 also provides more insight into our discussion here. It was not with the blood of bulls and goats and calves, but with his own blood, he entered the most holy place once for all. There again, the book of Hebrews provides us insight into the better system under which we live today. And that is because of the efficacy of the blood of Christ, that one-time sacrifice for all that did indeed take away the sins of the people. No need for a scapegoat today. As Christ has become that scapegoat, it was not possible for the blood of bulls and goats to take away sins, but it was God's plan for the blood of Christ to do so. Now, one more passage. Let's look at and read Romans chapter 5, verses 9 through 11. Romans chapter 5, verses 9 through 11. Much more then, having now been justified by his blood, we shall be saved from wrath through him. For if when we were enemies, we were reconciled to God through the death of his Son, much more having been reconciled, we shall be saved by his life. And not only that, but we also rejoice in God through our Lord Jesus Christ, through whom we now have received the reconciliation. Sins were, in essence, rolled forward from year to year under the old system. They remembered those sins. Sins had to be laid on the scapegoat under the old system because the sacrifice, the appropriate sacrifice, and the sacrifice that satisfied God's will was not offered until his Son came, died on a cross, and shed his blood to pay the price for those sins. You see, we are now justified by his blood. We've been made one. We have been saved from wrath through the price that was paid. And we have been reconciled, made one again, through the blood of his Son that was shed on the cross once for all mankind. Thank you again for joining us in this study. Hope it has been of benefit to you. Until next time, God bless you.